All right, we have an amazing surprise for you, something that's fantastic for us as well. The one and only Irami Frimpong, live in the flesh here in studio. He is over at Funky Academic on YouTube. If you guys haven't already subbed there, I don't know what you're doing with your lives. Go and do that immediately. Irami, great to see you.
Good to see you in person.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Yeah, I don't want people to squander their lives. So yes, you should go over to Funky Academic.
Yeah, go Funky
That's very
Academic. Actually, like, I mean, your mind will be blown. You won't agree with everything, or maybe you will, I don't know. But you will definitely learn a lot, and your mind will be blown.
I remember the first time Irami came on, and I was like, who the hell is this guy? And I watched one of these videos, and I was like, oh shit. I was like, there's some interesting stuff here.
Where did you get? I was like, a random guy on Twitter. That's what he had to say. So
now you're here. We said in our announcement video, one of the reasons we wanted to go independent was so we could talk to you, people like you without any worry about what was going to happen, and so we could talk to you for an extended period of time. And we promised our premium listeners that they're going to get exclusive long-form interviews. And we thought, after Joe Rogan, who better to pick than the Funky Academic himself. So, as I'm famous for at this point, whenever I'm interviewing you, you have 30 minutes. You're here to talk about infrastructure.
Infrastructure.
Tell us what to learn.
First of all, the Joe Rogan interview is fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, he is not the person that people portray him to be. He's actually, I think he's a proto-left. Like, I think he understands that unity is important for a nation.
Yes, absolutely.
He thinks it happens naturally and tribally. I think nothing in America happens naturally and tribally, and you need to manufacture it, and a whole lot of self-governance is figuring out how to manufacture unity from opposing forces that aren't opposing in the right way. You got to get them opposing in the right way. For example, workers and bosses need to be opposing in the right way, in the same way that, you know, the Atlanta Hawks and the Chicago Bulls need to be opposing in the right way.
Yeah.
But I think he's a good guy. He's a good guy who actually cares about how to secure community and the institutions for security. I mean, for community. So thank you for exposing him to me.
You're very welcome.
And and I'm a better person for listening to that interview.
Well, tell us then about, you wanted to come here to talk a little about what infrastructure is.
Right.
And what do you mean by that? Because to explain to everybody and to everybody who's listening, infrastructure is a meme, right? People are like, oh, childcare is infrastructure. Or like, something like bridges are only infrastructure. So you, you obviously have a different view on all this, and you want to explain a little bit to people about why some other things they may not consider are infrastructure. What do you mean by that?
So there's a standing confusion in American discourse, and it kind of expresses itself like a boil or something like that. Every time we have to have like a hard conversation about what should we do with our public money, right? So the first time in recent memory was with essential workers, right?
Yes.
It's the same question. It's the same fundamental problem. We don't know what essential workers are. We don't know the purpose of government, so we don't know what's essential and what's not. And so it ends up being just like a hodgepodge of things people happen to like. And those people are considered essential. And we're seeing the same thing in the infrastructure negotiations, right? So the danger is that they become a hodgepodge or a grab bag of things people happen to like. And it becomes a power struggle because there's no kind of systematic unity into what understanding like what infrastructure is and what we need for self-government. So it becomes things people happen to like, and the most powerful people in the room get to define infrastructure, and then we're okay with that. Because politics is all about power anyway.
Correct.
Right? So that's the story we tell ourselves. But politics isn't about power. It's about actually securing the conditions for self-government in the United States. So if I were in Abu Dhabi, right, in the UAE, and I would ask them what infrastructure is, they would probably say like airport, water,
gas.
Yeah. And if I go to Congress and ask them what infrastructure is, they would probably say airports, roads, gas. So that should already like cue a bell in your head that says like, maybe we don't actually know what we're talking about if the character of our nation, infrastructure, what we need, and the character of like, you know, kind of an oligarchy that's run by 5 families that kind of rotate.
Not kind of, a literal oligarchy.
They literally, they rotate. Like what we need and what they need isn't going to be the same thing, right? So you need to understand what infrastructure is relative to the character of your institution to understand what kind of infrastructure needs you need. So if you reduce it to these kind of existential goods, or like actually commerce goods, is what we're talking about with like Abu Dhabi or Singapore. They'll infrastructure will be the same thing. It'll be water, roads. If we reduce it to these kinds of commerce goods, then we're actually missing the point of the United States, which is supposed to be self-government, and like actually securing freedom. So
when you say commerce goods, you mean things that are required for businesses like Amazon to engage in commerce. That's what you mean.
Yes.
So like they want the bridges, they want the roads, they want these basic essentials that allow them to run their business.
Right. Right. So, for example, infrastructure with respect to roads is going to be, you can't expect Ford and you can't expect GM to build roads, but we want to live in a nation with Ford and GM, and we want people to be able to like found businesses like Ford and GM. So we provide as a universal goods for particular businesses. All right. So self-determination, which is something that people should know about, is about particularizing yourself within a universal. Right? If you haven't particularized yourself within a universal, nobody knows what you're doing, right? So this show, Breaking Points, is a particular kind of media, right? I know what it is because I also know what CNN is, and I also know what the Young Turks is, and I also know. But you don't do it like they do it. You do it like you do it. You do it with your stamp on it. That's why it's yours. It's not completely alien to the media landscape, or I wouldn't even be able to recognize it as what it is. But what it is I say, this is more relevant, this is more important, and this is why you should all become premium members.
Thank you.
Thank you for making that.
Of Breaking Points, because they can provide a service in a way that only they're doing. They can do, right? So you have particularized yourself with this show. You have realized self-determination with this show. It also depends on the same universal infrastructure as all of the other particularizations, right? So, everybody uses YouTube and what is it, Soundcast?
Simplecast.
Supercast, which
Supercast is that's how you can sign up, but Simplecast is what we use to publish our podcast.
Right.
Yeah.
Depending on who you talk to, it could be another piece of infrastructure. Yeah. Right, so it allows you to enable yourself in your way relative to other people who have particularized themselves in that way. So the problem is you cannot spend your resources that you have drawn to put together this show in order to have like servers and do that kind of work that YouTube does. Yeah. It would put you at a competitive disadvantage relative to
dramatic, just so people know.
Yeah, if you spent all of your money on servers and all of that, like that kind of stuff, as opposed to like allowing YouTube to do it, then you wouldn't be able to compete. Right. So that's the infrastructure that allows you to particularize yourself. That's the universal. It also allows your competition to particularize itself. But the idea is that like you do it better, so you can share. Everyone can be on the roads. Amazon will do it better.
Makes sense.
Right. So that's what infrastructure is going to be. It's the goods and services that you produce as a matter of your freedom, and then there are goods and services that need to be produced in order for you to produce the goods and services that are a matter of your freedom. Right. So infrastructure is going to be in this.
In the latter category.
In the latter category. Right. So you have Ford, you have GM, but they can't produce roads because one, they don't have the resources. Two, if one of them decides I need to build a road, the other one is going to use that as a sign of weakness and cannibalize that kind of outlay of resources that Ford used to build the roads to build a better car, and GM will win.
Makes sense.
Right? So like, infrastructure is the universal good that allows everyone to particularize themselves, even when and especially when the particular realization of freedom is not organized to thrive and produce that universal, right? So the question is, what kind of universal are we? What kind of particularization do we need as a nation, right? I need to be able to particularize myself as a citizen. I need to be able to particularize myself as a civilian, like just in civil society. And I need to be able to particularize myself as a family member, right? Like I need, like that's what it is to be free. There are some other structures of freedom too, but those are going to be different ways. And in different ways, I need to be able to actually like do it on my terms in some way, right? So I need the conditions that allow me to do these different spheres of activity on my terms. Right?
Got it. Yeah.
I need this. All right. So in the UAE, they're not worried about any of that. They're just worried about GDP.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct.
So
and not GDP per capita. GDP
overall.
Yeah.
Right. Which has been the mantra here as well.
Which is a problem because that's just a failure of actually thinking about what freedom actually requires. And also, we don't take self-government seriously. We don't actually care about it. How many people actually care about governing versus how many people want other people to govern?
Yeah.
I want other people to set the rules. I just want to participate. These are two different muscles.
So let me ask you though, give me some specifics of the type of infrastructure that would help secure that type of freedom that isn't typically contemplated by the Amazons of the world or their, bought and paid for politicians who are doing their bidding.
Well, depending on, I have art. I brought art.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so
Let's see it.
Let's see this art that I have. So the first thing we're going to look at is this article from 1918 in Greenville, South Carolina, where it says Negro women to be put to work, right? So the idea was that their husbands were fighting in World War I, drawing a pension, and so the wives didn't want to clean houses anymore while their husbands were drawing a pension. They would watch white people's kids. They would actually want to go home and watch their own kids.
Okay.
And so, and one would think that that would be their right? To not work for white families and instead go home and watch their own kids and clean their own houses. But that was a kind of affront to the freedom, to the self-determination of the white families in Greenville. Right? Like part of what it was to be their kind of family, the way that they decided, meant someone else watched the brats.
Sure.
And then, and did the dishes because I decided as a part of my family that that's not really making me a better parent or a family person. I need someone else to do it. Just like being a better, just like taking my trash to the dump every week doesn't exactly make me a better homeowner or property owner. It's better when someone else does it.
Sure.
So as a matter of infrastructure, they needed someone else to clean their house and watch their kids. And the thing is, there's a way in which you're not wrong. The problem in a democracy is that you have these goods and services that are produced by freedom, and then there's these goods and services that are produced for freedom, and the goods and services that are produced for freedom we call infrastructure. But they're produced and they're by people who themselves need to be serviced by other people.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah,
So the idea is that maybe instead of just saying maybe we should just subsidize house cleaners. Is the argument I would draw from this. Because maybe the white housewives weren't wrong. And maybe it actually is oppressive. And to the family freedom.
Well, you see a lot of this right now. So one of the things I was tracking before the pandemic is that the largest growth sectors in the economy for employment were things like nail technicians, personal trainers, Uber Eats drivers, So I was like, wait a second, this is all just enabling the bullshit upper middle class lifestyle, right? That's basically
It might not be BS.
No. That's why I want to hear from you, because you're talking about making it so that we should subsidize that maybe as a society.
That more people have access to the bullshit upper middle class.
But in a way,
hey, look, I had a house cleaner for a little bit, and you know what I did? Read better books.
Okay.
It didn't make me a worse parent.
No, you're not wrong. Listen, we're all busy people. Obviously, I'm guilty as sin as using Uber Eats, okay? I've got platinum whenever it comes to Uber
Was that
Platinum.
worthless?
No, it wasn't worthless at all because I spent that time to build this business, okay? So listen, I'm not saying that I didn't provide, but that being said, I don't think somebody's employment should be up to the whims of whether I'm busy enough to cook or not.
Well, and the only infrastructure that gets provided for is that supports, us to have
that's
Uber
right.
Eats.
That's right.
And
Those people don't have delivery.
In my world, house cleaners themselves have house cleaners, right?
Okay.
So you have to understand, and they get paid well and subsidized. Angela Davis has a fantastic piece on this. Chapter 13 of her book, Women, Race, and Class.
Okay.
And it's just about the obsolescence of housework. It doesn't actually make people better or freer. It's just after about 4 kids, I have 3 kids. I think after about 4 kids, you can always be doing laundry.
Oh, yeah.
my
And it doesn't make you a better parent.
I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah, you have about
I have 3.
Yeah, so you can always, in a world, you could always be cleaning things and doing laundry. And that's not gonna make you a better mom. So, and it's not gonna make you a more creative and interested and more meaningful family member.
Okay.
The idea that this is infrastructure that secures a particular kind of freedom actually makes sense, because not all freedom is gonna be commercial freedom. There's a freedom of the family where I get to decide how I'm gonna organize my household.
Yeah.
But without, the maids, it wasn't the people deciding how they're gonna organize their household. It was the fact of mess deciding, that over-determines how they spent their day and how they spent their time raising their children, right? So the idea is that the infrastructure of these housekeepers allowed for a certain kind of freedom. And we saw this again in another clip I'm going to show you. This is 20 seconds long, so it's very short.
No problem. What's the clip? Want me to Google it?
I can't actually.
What is it?
You can't. I drew it from a city council.
Just describe it to us then.
All right, so in this clip, you're going to find one of my Athens city council members. It's publicly off
publicly
the internet.
available.
Yeah, publicly available. Talk about the shutdown of Athens for the pandemic, and he was very concerned because he had people come to him talking about the shutdown of the pandemic. I'm still going to get my housekeepers and cooks, right? Mm-hmm. And so this is what he says at the meeting. He's like, to be clear, because I've had constituents concerned about this. Essential workers include people who deliver food and people who service the homes that food and other goods are delivered to, right? Okay. And so like people are going to keep their cooks and their housekeepers. And this is what he says. So we can play the clip.
From a constituent that one of the essential businesses is businesses that ship or deliver groceries, food goods, or services directly to a residents. That will include domestic workers. So that means that
Cleaning.
our cooks, our house cleaners, whatever, are still in business.
All right, go.
And so we understood that was essential service. We this
reminds me of what's her name, Ainsley on Fox and Friends, talking about
her nanny,
her au pair to come.
Well, I mean, as Irami's saying, she has to get up at 3 a.m. every morning. She's a rich lady, and I believe she's a single mom. So she's not wrong.
Yeah, for her to do her job,
right,
and for her to express herself in this profession. Like she needs a nanny, maybe that should be subsidized. Maybe these are the kind of conversations we should have, as opposed to just subsidizing Amazon. Okay. Maybe we should subsidize the different kinds of freedom rather than just like the individual commercial freedom.
And what are
tease that out.
What are the barriers to that type of subsidy? Because it's not an accident that we only are subsidizing like the Amazon version of self-determination and not subsidizing people's roles in their community, people's roles in their family. What are the barriers within our politics to doing that?
So the liberals have the barrier because they don't want to admit that freedom is tied to other people doing stuff for you.
Okay.
Freedom is tied to other people working for you. Freedom is tied to other people working for you. Yeah, freedom is tied to other people.
Okay.
Other people.
Other way. Over here.
Other people.
One.
Oh,
number 2. Yeah.
Freedom is tied to other people masticating the world for you.
Okay.
Like, oranges do not grow in Kroger. Like nothing in this studio was produced by you.
Correct.
It was produced by other people that then allow you. Even the show, there are producers.
Of course.
Other people who you'll never see who allow us to be doing what we're doing. And they do their job very well and we want them to be paid. And I support and I hope that my premium membership is going to them being paid fairly.
Certainly, they're
because
paid well.
They are the enabling condition for you guys to be as awesome as you are. None of this was produced naturally.
Right.
It was produced by other people masticating the world for us, and that is the structure of freedom, because nature is indifferent to your aspirations, would you believe it or not? That mess that your kid made does not care that you have a deadline to write. Like, does not care that you have a book you want to publish. Like, nature is completely indifferent. And so other people have to masticate nature and prepare the world for you, for then you to choose how to realize yourself in it. And so this notion that freedom is a matter of just kind of choosing among the things that are given. No, the things that are given will dictate the terms. Like the avalanche coming down to me, like doesn't. I need someone else to build a retaining wall. For my freedom to actually be
like
about
levees.
Me. Yeah, levees, right? So, and I need someone else to do it because I can't do all of the things and still have my life be mine. Right? It'll be dictated by the things I need to do that were given to me. So the fact of what liberals have a problem with that.
And what about conservatives?
Well, conservatives know that the world needs to be produced. They just kind of have a distorted notion of who should be doing the producing and why. Okay. They think wives should be cooking and black people should be picking stuff. And so like,
all right, Irami.
Well, okay, like black people across the United States are not doing like great jobs.
What you're saying, right? I completely agree with you. I think it's a travesty. So the question is that what you're talking here, this seems a bit libertine, at least in my view,
Right.
is that you want everybody to be self-actualized. Why is that the best thing for society? So I saw a lot of this during the childcare debate here in DC, which is that if you go and you look at the polling, American Compass did this, which is that a lot of lower class women do not want childcare necessarily. Right. They want to stay home and they don't want to work.
Right.
Now, there's nothing wrong with that in my opinion. I think they should be paid to do so, right?
Yeah.
Okay, no, go ahead. So do you know where I'm going?
This is a hilarious thing, because we'll bring back the Negro women to be put to work.
Yeah.
This is very funny because, feminists think I'm a misogynist when I just point out the truth, but we're going to point out a little bit of an uncomfortable truth right here. So you have these Negro women who are being forced to work as women so that white women cannot work as women.
Okay.
Because part of what it is to be a white woman at that time is to have
fancy parties.
Just other people do other people work outside of the home.
Yep.
And then other people work inside of the home too.
Okay.
Feminists aren't really honest about some of the perks that we've kind of larded into to womanhood. Just in general, and if you say you're being a misogynist, I'm saying look, oppressed groups usually don't live longer than their oppressors. Poor people do not live longer than wealthy people. Black people do not live longer than white people in these United States. But yet women seem to live a long time. So it's a weird
You're getting yourself in trouble.
It's a weird.
Getting us in trouble.
You're getting me in trouble right now.
You're gonna lose.
I can hear people who are angry.
But it's a weird kind of impression that allows you to live longer than your oppressor. I'm just saying we need to think about maybe there are some perks that are involved that we don't talk about that are tied to womanhood, but they're racialized. Okay. So there isn't actually a universal woman.
That's right.
Because the same category woman forced this group out of their home to work for this other category woman who both living out their womanhood, but since there is no universal category woman and there actually isn't a universal category male either.
Yeah. I was actually just looking at the death data yesterday that just came out, which is that until there was a huge spike in Black life expectancy until around 2005. And then things started to taper off for roughly the same rate for whites and Blacks with no BA, while Blacks and whites with BAs continued to go up. Right. Now the Black rate was still lower than the white one. So on the aggregate level, it's still much lower. But I just found fascinating that the drop amongst people, whites and Black males in particular, especially males, with no BA, pretty much dropped at the exact same rate. Now, white males without BA still live longer than Black males without BA, but I was like, whoa, if you want to talk about class divide, that's crazy, right?
Well, so the idea that there is no universal man, there's a guy by the name of Chetty over at Harvard who just came out with a racial wealth gap study, and he was like, look, it's actually driven by men. It's driven by the distinction of men. You hook up with a white, because if he says this right in the beginning of the synopsis of the piece. Well, if you adjust for education, Black women and white women are about the same.
Yep.
The problem is the men, right?
Yeah.
So you hook up with a white guy, you get a balloon. You hook up with a Black guy, you get an anchor. And I told my wife this, that the richer for more, better for worse, it means something when you made me.
Wait, so why is that though? Why is that?
Because stigmatized communities have never actually been accepted by the labor market at fair wages and working conditions.
But why isn't that the same for Black women?
I think we're not honest about the way we've gendered work and what it means. For example, so 2 generations ago, a woman of your class would have been pushed to marry an earner and have kids and stay at home and
that's basically it.
Yeah, you would have been there would have been intense social pressure for you to live that life.
Right.
Right. And there also would have been intense, and you would have picked a nice guy out of the guy. Not all nice wealthy guys need wives too. So you would have picked a guy who was nice and who also would have felt duty bound to take care of you. Right. So one of the feminist struggles was actually giving you the opportunity to not depend on some guy who's going to take care of you and actually go out and do this, which I think you're doing pretty well. And I support that.
Well, thank you.
But
Thanks for your support.
I know you don't need it. You don't need me. I'm on your
You don't
show.
need it anymore.
You don't need it. I pitch ideas to you. And the inverse of that is black women fighting for the right to stay home and not work for like,
Getting back to what I was talking about.
which is what Saagar was talking about, right?
Yeah.
So the inverse of that, like, of the feminist struggle is like black women want the choice to stay home because the choice to stay home.
Many people do. And I
because
think it's fine. If you want to go work, that's fine. Right.
We don't talk about how the labor market, and this is why, and I get a lot of heat for this, but I'll say it here because like the premium subscribers deserve a little bit of truth.
They deserve the truth. Yeah.
They deserve the truth.
Remember, people are listening too, so you can do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So like a feminist labor struggle will never actually secure working class justice. And
Tease that out.
Well, that's because at the upper class, at the middle and upper class, the ideal is not to be a better paid like janitor.
Yeah.
Right. They're like so the idea, like, there's an out to work. The labor market is a fundamentally different beast for the people who are choosing whether to enter it or stay home and be taken care of by a dude versus people like moi who are choosing, who are damned to it and now have to figure out how to secure dignity from it.
Okay.
So essentially self-determination, I mean, all it means is like being able to pick. So if your choice, if you are being denied the choice to be able to stay home with your own kids, if that's what you want, then you got to fight for that. If you're being denied the choice to go out into the workplace and like make it for yourself and not have to depend on a dude, then you got to fight for that.
Right, but they're both different. They both require different people producing.
Right.
They both require production. And they require people doing work that they don't want to do. So like we got to figure out a way to compensate the work that's being done and also provision. I mean, you talk about this a lot about how like the top, 30%, 5 more minutes. You talk about how the top 30% of people pretty much get their goods and services provided for them by the bottom 80%. Like,
yeah, that's what everything is built for. And it works pretty well for that group.
Yeah, for that, they're free. That 20% is free because the rest of the world is masticating the world for them.
Yeah.
Right? So, what do
you think about the self-determination of like, one of the things we've been covering is, and we were actually talking before you came on about how you've got all these like white affluent liberals who are choosing to move to Atlanta, choosing to move to these other cities that are low cost. They're saying, I'm not going back to the office, screw you. And if you don't like it, you can fire me. I'm doing something else. You had a lot of people who kind of during COVID, once they were out of the office environment and all the like drama and coffee breaks that were giving them the illusion of this being something productive that they wanted to spend their time on, when they were left with the actual work, they were like, I hate my job. And actually the percentage of people even, who are in that relatively affluent, provided for group who are actually happy in their job is very, very low. Do you feel, though, that they have self-determination, or is there a barrier there as well?
Well, we have to understand that there are different kinds of freedom, right? It's structured differently. The freedom you have in civil society is going to be different than the freedom you have in your family, where like you're immediately connected with a person. We're other than other people in different ways. I am other than my spouse differently than I'm other than my boss, right? But I'm still other than both of them. But the freedom I have with my spouse as a kind of immediate unity to kind of decide what we do with our household is a kind of freedom that can be checked from the freedom I have to like go out in civil society. And there's a reason why like I shouldn't be able to talk to my my wife's therapist or whatever. Like there's a reason why there needs to be a separate, like these are different kinds of freedom. So we need to understand that there are different spheres of freedom, but they have to mutually reinforce each other to sustain.
Because I guess what I'm thinking about is I think debt and societal expectations, like the keeping up with the Joneses type of thing, and the intense shame that we put on lower class people as being like less than, I think that's kind of another check on freedom and self-determination. Because even if you don't really need this job, you don't really have to do this thing, people feel like they're trapped in this cycle, even though technically they're not, based on what the image of affluence that they want to put out in the world, the sort of bills that they've racked up and have to be able to continue to pay, the type of house they want to live in, the type of schools that they want to pay for their kids to go to, et cetera.
Right, so we have a confused notion of success such that when people actually achieve it, it makes them miserable.
Yeah.
Right. So the problem, and I talk about this with my students, and like they're kind of shocked at the first. I was like, I don't worry that you're not going to achieve your dreams. I'm worried that you're going to achieve your dreams, but you've been force-fed kind of unfortunate dreams, and those dreams will like leave you to a midlife crisis. So I want to start the midlife. You start the midlife crisis now, and then it'll just kind of go like an IV drip.
Right.
Like,
you started the day you enter the University of Georgia. You just didn't know.
You just didn't know, which is good because you don't want it to hit you like a train. That's how you get suicides. But like, I want to that Talking Heads song, right?
Here's the thing, Irami. Okay, so last thing, last question. What is the main takeaway you want people who are listening to this to get away from this?
All right, so infrastructure is going to be the things that particular activities are not going to secure for themselves.
Okay.
Right, so in the United States, infrastructure is going to include roads and airports, but it's also going to include, if I'm going to be free as a citizen, I'm going to need my candidates to debate.
Yes.
But it's not in the candidates' particular interest to debate each other, right? So I'm going to need—
making you less free.
Right, it's making me less free. It becomes a cartel where the candidates are a faction that then rule over the electorate. So the infrastructure, political infrastructure, is going to be, a third party, women league voters or whatever, that sets up debates and organizes debates. That's going to be political infrastructure. Family infrastructure might include housekeepers. And so that I can organize the family, so that I have a free family, right? So we have to look at these different institutions of freedom and figure out how people particularize themselves in it, and then how, what kind of universal institution you need in order for people to particularize themselves in it. And then figure out how to make sure the people who do the frontline masticating of the world also get the world catered to them, because at the end of the day, freedom is going to be tied to having other people do work on the world for you. This is why, like, it doesn't, like, trying to build a working class coalition in the South among whites is a little bit tricky, because while, like, everybody hates their bosses, they also like having cheap gardeners and having black nannies. So, like, if you have other people doing work for you, you might not fight the system, even though, like, you have different bosses, right? Because a part of freedom is going to have other people doing work for you. So if I can convince you that while you're a tool of me, I can make other people a tool of you, then,
and we can all be tools for each other.
It sucks being a tool for my boss, but like, I get other people being tools for me to make the world for me. Right. So like, I'll suck it up and just I'll put up with it.
Makes sense.
And so like, and since we don't understand the different spheres of freedom and the kind of how they have to be mutually reinforcing, we don't understand how to think through the infrastructure. So it just all becomes a grab bag of goodies of things I happen to like.
That's important. And so last thing, where can people find you?
Yes.
Where can they check you out?
Yeah, you should all go to www.funkyacademic.com and check out the videos, or go to YouTube and put in Funky Academic or my name, Irami Osei Frimpong, and check out what I have to say, because I don't want you to squander your life. And also, depending on who you talk to, I make myself downright unemployable. So it would be great if you kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month at funkyacademic.com, so I can keep telling my truth.
Worthy
support
investment.
Irami. I will become a supporter in order to keep you saying the things that you do. We appreciate you joining us, sir.
Fearlessly.
Thank you.
We love having you, Irami. Great to see you in person.
Thank you.